One. Okay. Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Hello. Hi, Wolf.
How you doing?
This is our first Facebook Live together.
Fantastic.
And this has been in the offing for what, about 4 or 5 years now that we've been talking about
It seems like even more.
doing this? Yeah.
It seems like even more.
Yeah, exactly. So
Thank you.
there's a reason we met. Serendipity. That's right. There's a reason we met. And we met in a very sort of a different way, where I interviewed you for a class I was taking at Salt Documentary.
Yes.
So with that being said, though, before I go too far down that path, let me introduce my esteemed guest. This is Reverend Gola Wolf Richards. I call him Wolf, because he's like a stiff spirit. So I will be referring to him as Wolf, but you all have to call him Reverend Gola Wolf Richards. I'm only kidding. So what I'm going to do here is have Wolf tell you a little bit about himself, because he has done so many things in his lifetime that I don't want to leave anything out. So Wolf, would you tell everybody a little bit about your background and what you've done and what you're hoping to do moving forward?
Very good. Thank you very much. A little bit about me. I'm 71 years old, so there's a lot about me then, given all those years. Won't be able to tell every bit of it. My life has been involved in helping young people in particular. As a counselor, I'm a philosopher. My orientation is very, very, very much oriented to Chinese philosophy, the I Ching, or Book of Changes. So in terms of what I do now, I attempt to explain the nature of consciousness in a way that has people to understand that we can evolve peace based on how we evolve our own personalities. So it's character education for the sake of global conflict resolution. That's what I do. Character education for global conflict resolution.
So this is a very good time to be talking about that.
I should say.
So all of this, it almost feels like everything's been working up to this moment when we are in a time of a lot of conflict in the world, a lot of divisiveness. And it's interesting because, it's very fear-based.
Mm-hmm.
Everything that we see on TV and the news, Facebook, social media, there's so much doom and gloom that, it's no wonder that people are fearful.
Absolutely.
They're fearful. And that fear, at least as it seems to me, that causes people to compartmentalize, maybe to feel safe, and to try to control things, and in that control to label and to say it's us against them, and it's really based out of fear. So I would like to say, if you get nothing else out of this, you need to live life fearlessly, because as much as this is a time of great conflict, it's also a time of great opportunity.
That's true.
So if we can live in the solution and not the conflict, we can make really wonderful things happen. So I won't say that we're at a cutting edge time here.
I agree.
Would you agree?
I totally agree.
So I just want to back up for a minute, and just if you're just joining in, this is Reverend Gola Wolf Richards, who I'm going to call Wolf, because he says I can, because I'm allowed to. Yeah.
Everyone can.
But interestingly, I just want to make a point about Daughters of Change, because when you hear the name Daughters of Change, and you see that a lot of what I'm doing is about supporting women that are out there making change, well, there's another really important piece here, and that is that Daughters of Change is also inclusive of men, because we're not going to make change on our own. And that's another piece that I am actually going to read a piece that you sent to me that I really want to sort of come around to, because ladies, if you're out there listening, we have the ball in our court right now, okay? There's a lot bubbling up. Women are pulling together. And what I would like to say, as an experienced woman who's of a certain age, which I'm not going to tell you, Wolf was cool if he told you your age, I ain't telling you, but it's more than 39. And
I'm younger than you.
Yeah, she's younger. He's younger than me. And, here's the deal. If we come at this in anger, we're going to shut people down. They're not going to listen. You're not going to change minds by coming at people in anger and divisiveness. So with that being said, I'm not saying that you haven't seen things that have made you angry. Hell, I've been pissed since I couldn't play Little League when I was 6 years old, and I was the best ball player in the neighborhood. However, you need to take that discomfort, that anger, and let it fuel the bus. Do not let it drive the bus. We need to include men in this. We need to redefine feminism to include men, because without the guys, we need to be working side by side. Like, nobody needs to be taking over the world, right? So with that being said, I want to read something that you tweeted to me that I thought was so cool, and it goes around all of this that we've just been talking about. So you said, as the daughter of universal change, ding, Mother Earth embodies character to embrace what heaven disposes. For men and women to honor, thereby, peace is impossible without respect for the feminine nature.
Correct.
Okay? So that's a mouthful, right? That's a lot. That's a big thought. But hi Deb. Deb Nelson is here. Hi Deb, meet Wolf.
Deb. Hello.
He's a cool guy. You got cool girls, you got cool guys. He's a cool guy. So we're just coming back. We're talking about universal change, Deb, and we also just talked a little bit, I don't know if you heard it, about embracing men in the movement for women and with Daughters of Change specifically. I'm including guys. So with that very big thought, Wolf, can we just kind of break that down a little bit? So when you say, as a daughter of universal change, Mother Earth embodies character to embrace what heaven disposes.
Yes.
Let's talk about that piece first.
Sure, absolutely.
Okay.
One of the things, if I were able to influence people strongly, it'd be when we're doing problem solving, we want to take into account the background for all of human consciousness. It's the universe. So consequently, if I'm going to look for somebody, or rather I should say, right, some principles. Mm-hmm. If I'm going to find the principles for conflict resolution,
got it,
I need to look to the greatest, most inclusive background possible, the universe.
The universe.
So in the universe, you have a relationship between, and if we were to use a symbol in Chinese, yin yang, male and female, up and down. Mm-hmm. This transcends gender. Mm-hmm. So this quality, this principle, right, is not to be located in gender. It influences gender, but it influences all else too. Day and night, up and down, left and right, all of the ways in which the seemingly opposed aspects of life are conjoined. In the universe, it's done in harmony.
Okay. So
that even something destructive, right, is ultimately subject to something creative.
Got it.
So in human nature, we are at this precipice right now where if we don't learn it well, we'll destroy ourselves.
We'll destroy ourselves.
If we learn it well, right, we can heal all our divisions. So the most important place to start is not outside. It's understanding that the male and female, and I'm going to express it as masculine and feminine, exist within each one of our personalities. Mm-hmm. So consequently, one of the things I teach is when the emotions are very high, the logic tends to be low. Mm-hmm. So if I were to use Greek terms, that'd be eros for all of the emotions, and logos, right, for the logic and reasoning. Mm-hmm. So in every one of us, we found ourselves upended at times when the eros, the emotions get really high and our logic gets really low.
A lot of that on Facebook right now, argue about politics. Just saying.
And when we're mature, we mean that we can orchestrate those two qualities in some state of balance. Yeah. So in terms of our situation now, whether it's males, females, race, it doesn't matter. Politics, it doesn't matter. Right now, right, if it were to be that I, as a man, were excluded from supporting women, right, predicated on my being a man, right, that would be a mistaken way of trying to do right.
Yes.
So to do it actually right, I have to correct that mistake first, is to understand that by means of my humanity, by means of my wisdom, my sagacity, I can support women, right, as much as I can support men.
So let me just see if I can wrap that in my head, see if I'm going to explain this back to you properly. So when we're looking at any type of conflict resolution.
Resolution.
First, you have to be able to say it to be able to do it. If we look at what the universe shows us, it shows us balance, right? You have yin and yang, you have up and down, you have black and white. Everything comes into harmony and balance naturally in nature and in the universe. That's a natural shift of energy, if you will. Maybe I'm not describing that exactly right, but when you look, just fine. So when we then are looking at conflict resolution as human beings, we have to look inside of ourselves, because we mirror that inside of ourselves. Our soul, our being, our essence has male and female. It has all of these different pieces, good and bad, right and wrong.
Absolutely.
And so we need to look at that example of the universe and try to mirror that within our own self, our own essence.
Absolutely.
To find balance within, so that and then when we look at others, we need to find that balance as well. With the other. Is that, am I hitting that?
Right. Absolutely right. And one of the nice things about
Hi, Rick Knopper. Sorry, we have another Rick Knopper from Delaware. So
hi,
hello, Rick Knopper. My sister Ellen's from there too.
Delaware.
Gotta love families.
Wonderful. Thank you for being here. It's important to understand that constant movement from left to right, up, down, backwards, forwards, day and night. There's no world without that. It's always there. So one of the risks I run is that I can put an emphasis on external things, external versus internal. And if I do that, I'm apt to be in balance, not understand I need to have that eros and logos balance within me.
Right.
As I am dealing with the external,
so you can project it properly.
To respond to it properly, to shape it properly. So around us, we see it. If I were to say that we can't see the forest for the trees.
Right.
All around us, this is what's happening in nature. Winter, summer, up, down, backwards, forwards, wet, dry. So in the human experience, our tendency is to take that for granted, to not see it.
Right.
It's so much around us that we can't see the forest for the trees. But when you concentrate on it, in some sense or another, people use the term mindful. One way of being mindful is through conceiving of a situation rightly and regularly conceiving it rightly, regularly conceiving it rightly, regularly conceiving it rightly.
So I'm just going to stop for 1 minute and just say hi to everybody and just remind everybody again that we're here with Reverend Gola Wolf Richards.
Wolf.
And I call him Wolf. And he'll let me call him Wolf too. We'll have to figure that out. And we're talking about universal change, and we're talking about looking to nature and the universe for the harmony that we need to have inside of ourselves in order to deal with conflict at the scale, especially at the scale we're seeing it at now, right? Sure. So if something else you and I have talked about, which seems to fit into this, and kind of what we alluded to, or I alluded to in the beginning, about women working in harmony with men to make change for women and to make change for the world as well, right? So we've talked before about the fact that people get into these mindsets where they label others. It's us and them, okay? And we see that men and women, black and white, religion. Yeah. We see this in all sorts of ways. And we've had some really great conversations about that. So can we touch upon that as well? You're my Ijing.
Bless your heart.
Because I have to learn, I tried to read the book, but I have to talk to you.
I'll be glad to
my
do that.
My mentor.
Thank you, Maria. Yeah. That's an honor. Here's what's important to keep in mind. When we're talking about this relationship between seeming opposites, day and night, yin and yang, chaos, cosmos, that inherent opposition exists in human development.
Okay.
So we have immaturity, or infantile, and we have mature.
Yeah.
Grown.
Yeah.
So one of the first things to remember is that nature does conditioning. It conditions in a situation, and we can have customs, traditions, habits, addictions. Yeah. So we are habituated at this stage of overall human development. Overall, we are a very young species, but we've reached.
Especially me. Sorry.
given she's older than me.
That's right.
We've reached the point where nature says you have to step out of the infantile and adolescent stages into your most grown selves.
Okay.
And we describe ourselves Homo sapiens, humanity by means of sapiendus, wisdom, knowledge. So except that we carry contemplatively, keeping ourselves focused on and constantly having to do this balance between opposites. And it'll occur to me in terms of a racial divide, sexual divides, national divides, political divides. It's always there.
It's always there.
But I have to remember the habit that I'm having to cultivate myself into maturity away from. My habit is immature conceptions, not just my own, but the pressure from the collective tendency that will push us to, we're supposed to be enemies of those folks.
Right, us and them. It's
been going on for thousands of years. We are supposed to identify ourselves as distinct from those folks, going on for thousands of years. Breaking that habit so that everything will have a distinction, but it doesn't necessarily mean opposition.
So with that then in mind, so two things come up for me. One is when you talk about the infantile, would that also be high emotion and low logic?
Naturally so.
It would be naturally so. So it would be like low impulse control, low.
Yeah.
Okay, so we get into that stage where we react in that manner. So how, if we were to take, I mean, there's so much to choose from right now, but if any of these things that are divisive that are going on right now, let's even talk about, gun control. Like, so we have kids in the schools being killed, and we're so busy fighting about gun control that we're not actually addressing really clearly, as far as I can see, addressing the issue, right? So in a case of divisiveness, in a case of conflict, whether it's that or anything else, any tips on how somebody can begin to learn how to apply these principles personally?
Yes, indeed. Practice makes perfect.
Okay, so what would that practice, can you actually break down like conflict resolution for dummies? Conflict 101. But seriously, because for digesting this, it's big, right? So some steps, initial steps that we can individually take to start recognizing this in ourselves and how we're reacting to it.
Okay, very important. We do know that if we're describing the worst problems, we know that they are all inclined by habit force, hatred, habit. If we look at some of the best things, we'd also know they're inclined by habit force.
Okay.
Love, compassion. So if I wanted to choose, and in a simple fashion, which habits do I want to cultivate?
Okay.
So in deciding daily, I want to get up to make the world a better place. And if I know, in order to have it to be a better place, I have to govern how this relationship between the emotion high, logic low status is in all my decisions. So if I know, that's how I do it. That if I walk around during the course of a day regarding any decision I'm making, and I'm evaluating it for emotion high, logic low, or am I bringing those into balance? That's the way.
So, hi, Mike Rosario just joined us. That's Mike from the homeland, Indianapolis.
I lived
Reverend
there.
Gola Wolf Richards, you lived there?
Long ago.
See, serendipity. So, okay, so we would just kind of pulling back. We're talking about universal change, Mike, and also how we move through the world in terms of conflict and the really sort of the different forces within us. What do I want to say? Not the different forces, but the conflicting forces in us, and how we bring them to the world and to relationships. So, in the case of so you'd say moving through the world, waking up and deciding that humanity and love is what you want to cultivate. But there are some people that are just so angry and they're not there yet. You know what I mean? It doesn't make them bad people. They're just not there yet. They've had bad things happen to them. They're in the mindset of anger versus frustration, anger, maybe even despair, and depression, or seeing things. And so how do you get from there to waking up and saying, okay, I'm going to bring love to the world. You see where I'm going? So what are the steps kind of in between for somebody that really is uncomfortable maybe with where they're at and they maybe can't even articulate it? How do we help to bring somebody from that extreme back to the fold? Is it possible?
Yes, it is possible. One of the things that is important to be remembered is that nature does, again, back to the idea of the yin and the yang. Nature always has this binary way, right? This bimodal way, right, of operating: day, night, hot, cold, left, right. And also there's direct influences. There are direct influences, and then indirect influences. We have personal influences, and we have transpersonal influences. So when I work on myself, it would be wrong to think that I am not also working on you.
Okay, so it rubs off.
And rubs off, that would be direct.
I'm smart now.
It's wool. I hope she's not allergic.
Get the EpiPen, no.
It rubs off. Nature has, if we use this term, cause and effect, A plus B equals AB.
Okay.
And then we have acausal, meaning other than cause and effect.
Okay.
So if I want you to change, it may be possible that where you are developmentally and where I am, they come together and I could get you to change a particular behavior, right? No problem. But it may be that I'm dealing with you or someone else where that change, watch your kitty there.
Oh, kitty caca.
Where that change, right, is not easy to be done.
Okay.
So then what I do, I help you by having a sympathy with the fact that habits are hard to change.
Okay.
We have people who are quite intelligent, who are dying every day, right, from the opioid situation. Doesn't mean they're dumb. It's just showing that the habit force can dominate over our otherwise intelligent selves.
Okay.
So if I see someone culturally who's thinking in an untimely way, I have to think habit.
Okay.
And if I am conditioned by other habits passed along over the generations to be more understanding, there but for fortune go I. It's what's involved when we listen to the words of Christ saying, God forgive them, for they know not what they do. That would be an expression of what I'm talking about.
Okay. Okay.
That to hold sympathy for the fact that if I'm lucky enough to be the inheritor of the conditioning that allows me to be my better self, then I have to have sympathy for the person who, by means of conditioning, isn't there yet. So perhaps I can influence somebody directly, but I have to be comfortable that nature, not just me, nature has set up the rules whereby direct and indirect influences are viable.
So basically, what I'm hearing you say, in a nutshell, is that...
Nutshell, was that referring to me?
No. I'm referring to myself now. So if we take the time, hi Stephen Davis, if we take the time to cultivate that within ourselves, the balance, the high logic, low emotion, the understanding for people that are different than us and may think differently than us, even when maybe it's so different that our initial instinct would be to push back or to maybe not be so nice. That how we make change individually is by staying within that place within ourselves where we're balanced and where we're loving and where we're understanding. And just by moving through the world that way, we're helping to make change in the world.
Absolutely,
correct?
absolutely. So it starts with understanding we are not outside of nature. We're not outside of
It's
nature.
all part of it.
Everything that we do, including basic things, breathing, right? Everything we do, right, comes from nature.
Right.
So consequently, if I look to nature and say, how does nature change? Direct influences and indirect influences. So that's one level, direct and indirect. Then I have to think even deeper. Other than the direct causal factors involved in change, what does nature do regarding change at a more subtle level? Principles.
Principles.
That's what we mean by spirit.
Okay.
So if I am developing principles in my personality that affect my perspectives for conflict resolution, I'm spiritually fulfilling the way that nature intends me to expand good in the world.
So we're influencing, by moving through the world that way, we influence everything because we're all connected. The energy, the source, it's all connected.
Absolutely so.
I love that. So so we're at about 26 minutes. So I want to just kind of bring us back around now to this initial thing that we were talking about with men and women and the woman, moving through as a daughter of change.
Yes.
Okay. So when I started Daughters of Change, I had to really sit with it and think about what did I want it to represent? What did I want her to look like? And as I said, being older than Wolf, who's 69. I just changed being the old wise one here.
I'm 71 and she's old.
I am. And I just felt instinctively that the way to move things forward for women is to work in conjunction with men, and certainly not to work in opposition and in anger. And I just know that being angry doesn't get anybody to listen to you, right? You shut down. Who was to listen to anybody? Like, did you listen to your parents when you were a teenager? I seldom didn't. My sister can vouch for that. So when we talk about working together from a gender standpoint, so men and women are wanting to move forward, to make change, to me, to just be at the same level, not to take over, not to, we just want our spot, right? So any thoughts on just the male, female? I mean, am I right about that, or should I be out there? Should I be out there with my pussy hat? That really is a hat. I'm not. Don't kick me off Facebook. I'm not swearing. Not there's anything wrong with pussy hats, but I'm just saying. Should I see a lot of anger. I understand it instinctually. As a woman, I understand why there are women who are pissed, right? But it just doesn't. It seems counterintuitive to me. Like I said, let that fuel the bus. Don't let it drive the bus. So am I on target there, or should I just be pissed at you?
It's important to always stay back to the idea of being contemplative.
Yeah.
Hard for people to, for any one of us, right, to hold on to what is the resolving idea. If that's a habit around the world, we would have peace everywhere, and we wouldn't have this issue. So logically,
get on that, will you, Wolf?
Yeah, sorry, I'm working on it.
He already is.
I'm working on it. If that's the issue, then you say, why don't we have peace?
Right.
Why don't we have less contention between the groups? Well, it must be that we aren't doing very much of the right thing.
Okay.
So
I'm with you on that.
So consequently, we'd have to say that around the world, if we want to resolve all our problems, simply put, this issue of emotion high, logic low, emotion high, logic low is the issue.
Okay.
So if I am watching for that within myself, developing the central issue that foments these issues between men, races, women, races, nations, if I'm fixing that, developing, conditioning that in deliberately, you have to be deliberate to offset the automatic. Because as a baby, automatically my psychology is emotion high, logic low. To break that habit is to become grown.
To become grown. Okay, so are you saying I'm growing up? Am I growing up? I'm full-blooded Italian. This is asking a lot. no emotion, full blood.
Yes, you are grown.
Yeah. So there is hope there, but that is a direction that you would surmise is on the path. It's working together, correct?
It is, because if we look at what if I were to look at one category of experience and say, what's common? It's common to make the mistakes that have us at each other's throats.
Right.
That, how old is that? As old can be, right? It's all around. So that's a really bad addiction.
Yeah.
Culturally, psychologically. When we find those people that we praise, right, for breaking that habit, we call them saints. We call them sages, right? So that we look at the people that we worship.
I call you a sage. I called you a sage in my description too.
Well, bless your heart. I have to accept it. I accept it. So consequently, if we look to those people and say, rather than to simply worship them, let me act like them.
There you go.
And what are they doing, right? They are managing the psychology. It isn't that they don't have to work.
Right.
They're managing that psychology that allows them then to be as grown, to be the persons they need to be for peace in the world.
Right. So you're marrying those images, and we should work together and
Absolutely.
Stop the us and the them. Stop this us and this them. Immediately, says Wolf the Sage. You heard that here today.
Because most importantly, the us and the them will never go away.
Right.
You will always have opposites. It's how I respond to the opposites, such that I don't make it opposition.
Okay, so it's our personal response to the us and them.
To make harmony between naturally occurring opposition.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. I'm loving it. Do we have any questions before we wrap it up? Wrap it on up. Questions? Stephen, Mike, Rick, Deb, questions? Concerns?
Thanks for your attention. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So listen, this was fun. Wolf, this was great.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it myself.
So yeah, Wolf and I.
We'll do it again.
There'll be more Marie and Wolf. That's right. Okay. So listen, everybody, have a beautiful weekend. And if nothing else, if you walk away just questioning any of this or you know what you're seeing out there with all the divisiveness in the world and the fact that there is hope. I have great hope. I am very hopeful.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I really feel that all of this discomfort
the universe
right now
is the backdrop. Yeah. We have a lot of hope.
Yeah. I think this discomfort is for a reason. I think we're going through this because we all have to be able to look at it and figure out how to work through it together. Okay, so you heard it here today. Oh, Mike, after death. Okay, wait. So a question about after death, Mike? Life after death? I don't think that's
Would you read off the screen for me? Because
yeah, Mike just has a question, after death, question mark. Mike, are you still there? Can you clarify? Okay, yes. Can you just actually clarify the after death? Is that a question that you'd like us to answer, or are you making an observation? And if so, can you give me more to go on? I love Mike. He asks great questions. Good. He's from the homeland, too. Okay, he's saying he's there. Okay. Am I seeing this? Okay, so wondering about about energy after death. Okay, so what happens after death? Okay, so he's asking about the energy that we have within us after death. Where does that go? What happens? Maybe even in terms of the resolution.
Well, if it were to be, right, to stick with the idea of looking at the cosmos, looking at nature, we are alive.
Does it stay or go? He's asking.
We are alive consequent, right, to things that are dying. Fertilizing, the idea of something that fertilizes. There'd be no food were there not for death. So death is an energy, right? So to think that there isn't some energy from things that die, there wouldn't be any life were there not for the energy that we know from things that die. To then, by analogy, suggest that for some people, just a metaphor, to think that spiritually, do principles, right, allow for things that we would otherwise consider to be dead to have some effect on us? I think it's a wonderful metaphor and principle to believe.
So our energy when we die, as well, the energy that we're putting out, and that thing, that unique energy that's each of us, when our bodies die, does that physically go or does it stay?
It's there.
It's there.
It's always there.
It's
so
always
in the
there.
backdrop, all of our conceptions, light, dark, up, down, male, female, all of that conception, these are aspects of consciousness. So any divide, any assumption that there could be a division or any antipathy between things, life and death, up and down, male, female, we should know these are all properties of consciousness. So consciousness necessarily has relationships between the opposing points. So is there an inherent relationship between life and death in the experience? Of course there is.
So our energy goes on after the physical body dies.
Yeah, so long as we're dealing with human conception, as we're right now speculating,
right?
And
we're talking about human beings.
Yeah, we're talking about consciousness. So in terms of the nature of consciousness, it's always right to believe or see relationships between opposites.
So he's saying if life on another world existed, would it be similar? Interesting. So another planet?
That in terms of consciousness, where I'll have to stay, right, is that whatever we're talking about and assuming it to be some statement about what is outside of the context of consciousness is still within the context of consciousness. All opposites interface.
So that would be the same on like another planet if there were life on another planet. The rule, well, because we're saying the rules of the universe, right? So that would be the same no matter what planet.
It'd be in what I'm saying, very important, is sticking with the nature of consciousness itself.
Okay.
So speculation of all forms, whether it's in sciences.
Oh, right? Got it.
We never escape this inherent, this is what I do contemplatively.
Yes.
Stay in that one spot.
Yeah. So it's the same. It is what it is. Thank you, Mike. And if anybody has any other questions, you can put them on this feed after, because we're going to sign off now. We've been 36 minutes, and that's quite a long time for a Facebook Live. Oh, we can go 4 hours. We could do a filibuster. But we will, if there are any questions, I will make sure to find out from Wolf and get those answers back to you on the feed, okay? So thank you, everybody, for joining us again. This was Reverend Gola Wolf Richards.
Thank you.
My sage.
I'm at broadcastwisdom.com.
That's right, and that is in the event description, but I will put that up. Actually, I didn't put a description on this part. I'll put that up in the feed too, so that you can find his website.
Thank you Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great weekend. Go out there and make change. Woo-hoo! Mountain on you. Bye.